it gives me great pleasure now to introduce Simon Calder and extend a warm welcome to Simon coming back again. He was telling me he was here in February of this year. He's no stranger to us, but as Britain's leading commentator on tourism, I'm looking forward to hearing how he sees the future going, and hopefully doesn't give too hard or too much of a tough critique of our plans to how we rebuild tourism. So Simon, over to you.
Well, hello everybody, and it's an absolute pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for the welcome that you have given me. And I didn't realise, but I'm now going to have some foci. Is that correct? So they are basically where we are, and I know it's a place that we, apart from this astonishing location here in a beautiful city, circumstances are not quite as we would have designed them. And then I'm going to look at how I think the rest of the next decade will unfold, and then a few ideas that might address your particular businesses, your organisations. So, what a joy it is to be, first of all, in an amazing venue, the like of which there is nothing else in the island of Ireland or indeed in the UK. Secondly, real people. It's so lovely. And a number of you I've spoken to on Zoom over the past couple of years, but you're even more attractive in real life. That's fantastic. Mind you, what a time I've had. So my life up until March 2020 was entirely devoted to spending my time on holiday pretending to work. So I was doing some filming in Malta, then I had to test some beer in the Grand Place in Brussels. After that, I had to do a fly drive around Cuba, and then drift around Sydney Harbour being massaged by lovely Nadine while talking nonsense to a BBC camera. Ladies and gentlemen, while you are working hard with your businesses, bear in mind that I've got a pretty tough life and somebody had to do it. This was March 2020. I was on the lovely Yemeni island of Socotra, which is exactly where you don't want to be when a global pandemic takes hold. I have now, having spent the previous 25 years being on holiday pretending to work, I've spent the last 2 years being at work pretending to be on holiday. There I am at Stansted Airport talking about what's happening. And I finally got back to a beautiful beach at Castle Rock earlier this year. Oh, by the way, this isn't what you think it is. I went to a Visit Glasgow event. There was simply no atmosphere. So, what a joy to be in a departure lounge for the flight to Belfast, and how fantastic that the flight to Belfast actually went. British Airways is not having a great time. It's got resourcing issues. I know that you have too. It's cancelled 4 flights between George Best, Belfast City and Heathrow today. Fortunately, I got in last night, and of course it's nothing like the great opportunity to see the city and then be welcomed in, although I must say the stuff on the left does look a bit, dare I say it, Brexity. Anyway, I came out of the out of arrivals, and there was this welcome home thing. It wasn't actually directed at me, but I took it anyway. And here we are with people who are Belfast born. This is on the floor downstairs. Have a look before you get there. And of course, our world has changed, which is why you will find this pop-up testing centre at George Best, Belfast City. And why, I need to tell you, this is my personal lateral flow test this morning, and so I'm an all right person to be around. And this morning, just between waking up in the Harrison, lovely place to be, in the Sloane room, not because I am a so-called Sloane Ranger, but because, of course, Hans Sloane, great Northern Ireland figure. All the rooms there are named after great figures from Northern Ireland. That was my breakfast, ladies and gentlemen. Again, it's tough, but I managed to get through it. And then I was just reminded about why Belfast is in a class of its own. You have got superb I guess, more traditional locations like the Ulster Museum, which has been wonderfully revived. The Botanic Gardens, who doesn't want to be there? Great things happening, and your own personal city icon. Astonishing things going on here. I mean, frankly, look, I was here 10 years ago for the opening. Hands up, who else was here? Right, what an amazing thing. And as we heard earlier, this whole area was simply not recognisable. But now here we are at Titanic Belfast. It has become absolutely crucial for the city and for enticing people here. I've just done on the very first morning of Talk TV, I did a live broadcast from outside. They were very excited about it, and it is an amazing landmark. It is also, crucially, that word stories, because, as you know, Belfast is all about stories, and they are told brilliantly and compellingly here and elsewhere in the city. Oh dear, cities haven't had a great time, have they really? People have been avoiding them. People feel alarmed. London has been just astonishingly empty. Belfast too. Now, that is really worrying, except that everything from social history tells us that cities are magnetic and they will come back. And that's one reason why Belfast is such an important proportion, not just of room nights, but half of the total tourism revenue comes into Belfast. And that will return. But it's been tough, and anybody selling travel guidebooks hasn't been having a particularly good time. Any of us who've been abroad will know that just dealing with the restrictions has been incredibly difficult. That was just a question randomly from last year. These rules were changing at a phenomenal rate, and the Transport Select Committee earlier this week absolutely launched into the government, just saying that these restrictions were completely disproportionate, they were badly targeted, not thought through, and things such as hotel quarantine, which cost UK taxpayers hundreds of millions of pounds, was completely pointless. For a time, the UK has had by far the most onerous, expensive and difficult restrictions of any European country, and that has caused immense problems for, well, GB, I would say, even more than Northern Ireland. Nobody coming in. We saw GB's tourism decline by 84% in the summer of 2021, a figure far lower than any other European country. And before we get on to the cheerful stuff, I need to talk to you about the things which aren't going as particularly as we would have loved them to happen. Now, I absolutely recognise that wanting to leave the European Union is a perfectly legitimate political choice, and you will all have made your own views known, I hope, in the referendum. And that no point can we dispute what happened there. We can, though, look at what the effects have been. Anybody been to Kent recently? It is quite extraordinary what is happening. This is, well, you might have picked up that P&O ferries, of course, have been having their own difficulties. But what's been happening in Kent over the past few weeks is actually entirely because of Brexit and the extra checks that are necessary. The re-imposition of frontiers is, I think, going to cause quite a lot of problems. This was, I think, even by the standards of the Daily Express in London, this was quite a bold move in 2020, right at the start. There's, funnily enough, an odd little picture of Dominic Cummings popping up there, making a cameo appearance in the story. I don't know quite where they got the idea that subtract COVID, that Brexit would make us more appealing, except in this regard, and this is a valid thing, I think, in terms of cost of living crisis. Of course, one effect of the Brexit vote was to reduce by about 16% the value of sterling, and that has continued. That makes Northern Ireland and the rest of Great Britain more appealing to anybody coming from the European Union and spending euros, and it also makes the rest of the world more expensive for us. So that's the one bit of joy. And of course, the cost of living crisis, which is coming down the road, which, again, none of us takes any joy from, that could well mean that people are going to be very keen to spend their money where their pound is worth a pound. And if you're in GB and you want to go overseas, that takes you to Gibraltar, the Falkland Islands, or Northern Ireland. And Northern Ireland is the most appealing. One Brexit issue, which is, I am sorry to say, causing particular problems, is the decision last October to carry out a Brexit promise that passports only will be accepted from European Union people. Just to remind you what the situation is, until last October, anybody with a identity card from the EU could come in, and that was terrific. The Brexiteers said, we don't trust identity cards, even though documents like this are just as secure as passports. That's me talking, not them. And it was a really important thing for them to demonstrate we're getting tough on migration, which ultimately is probably a very large part of the Brexit debate. So they carried that out. It is an absolute disaster to say to 300 million European Union citizens who have identity cards, because they've got to, but don't have passports, because why would you when you can get into 36 countries, including Turkey and the Caucasus republics of Georgia, Armenia, and Azerbaijan? Why would you get a passport? Because the UK demands that we want one. So I'm going to go and queue up for an hour in a post office and pay €100. I don't think I'll bother. I think I'll go somewhere else. Now, and here I'm going to get a little bit political, only because I'm trying to observe what is happening and what I think will happen. We've also got the extraordinary ETA discussion, and my goodness me, maybe I should get out more, but I was gripped by the Northern Ireland Affairs Committee last week when we saw just how much the Home Office had thought about the impact on tourism, how little the Home Office had thought about the impact on tourism of this rule. And just in case you're not familiar with it, so everybody who comes in from the Republic of Ireland who is not an Irish or a British citizen will have to have a electronic travel authorization, which will be immensely complex and complicated. And all I'll say is that at the time of Brexit, the Northern Ireland Secretary was Theresa Villiers, as you know, who was a very, very strong Brexiteer. But I kind of get the sense that maybe she hadn't thought too clearly about exactly how we're going to deal with Northern Ireland after Brexit. I'll leave that there. But as you will know, there's a little bit of controversy about a party or two in London. I have talked to my political colleagues at The Independent. The betting is that we will have a new Prime Minister quite soon, and my inference from that will be that silly rules which say a perfectly good ID card can't be used will be dropped because of the drastic impact on tourism in GB, and that the ETA idea will be eased, and that there will be many, many sensible measures taken in terms of Northern Ireland. We shall see. And then we've got, this was from the 1980s, a happy in-tourist poster. Of course, the Ukraine situation is a humanitarian disaster, and the sort of thing that I think none of us could expect would happen in 2022. We have yet to see what happens, but I was speaking this morning to the boss of Heathrow, where one of the many headwinds that they are anticipating is that Americans will be put off coming here to the UK. And I did ask specifically, and John Holland Kay said, yep, Americans are frightened of coming to London and by extension to other parts of the UK by the war in Ukraine. He also told me, by the way, and we heard earlier about how there's quite a lot of kind of pent-up demand. He also said that one reason city breaks are doing really well at the moment is because people have got so many vouchers that they're trying to spend. They're taking 3-4 city breaks a month. And, of course, we heard about all the fantastic conferences coming back. Another impact of COVID is a reassessment, of course, of all our roles and our lifestyles and so on. And I'm really pleased to be able to say that there is most definitely coming out of the United States evidence of a lot more blended tourism. And that means people who are in Belfast for conferences, people who are working in whatever capacity here, but they're here on a short business trip, they are increasingly likely to extend the trip to bring their partner, their spouse, and to actually make a trip of it. And this is, blended tourism like that has been kind of talked about for decades as a theoretical rather than a practical possibility, but it is certainly coming back in the US. So that's a reason to be cheerful, and I'm going to come on to some more. Right, the outlook is absolutely bright for Belfast. Partly because, well, that was the scene when I basically lived at Heathrow Airport, and that was the scene most of the time. That's where I was there just the other day. Travel has absolutely restarted, and people are now infused, and there's different ways it could go, and there's a bit of everything. So there's some people who will say COVID was a disaster, I'm not taking any risks, but there's actually far more people who are saying we didn't realize what astonishing good fortune we had at the end of 2019, start of 2020, in terms of our horizons, in terms of the opportunities to travel, and people are back. Connectivity is back, apart from those BA cancellations. Flybe was obviously very, very sad when it went bust, and goodness me, Belfast City, George Best Belfast City was affected more than any other airport, as you will know from first-hand experience. Of course, it all got muddled in with the start of the coronavirus pandemic, so it's been an absolutely desperate year for an airport that I find extremely good, as I, of course, do Aldergrove and City of Derry as well. But with the new Flybe coming back, and I don't know how long it's going to last, the competition is now astonishing in terms of links, because, of course, all the really successful links have been backfilled by Eastern, by Aer Lingus, by British Airways, by Loganair and so on. And now you've got Flybe coming back and saying, we're back and we're going to be doing exactly what we were doing before. So extraordinary times. I think that this will really help when people in GB are thinking, well, where can we go where it's going to be really easy, we haven't got to fill in any forms, and they're sort of casting around on Skyscanner that Northern Ireland will be there and be very good value. And of course, Stena Line continues to sail on, and P&O Ferries is now back with a couple of ships from Larne out to Cairn Ryan. Worth saying, from the environmental point of view, it is definitely the case that there is a big market, I would say, that is ready to be picked up from northwest England, travelling via Liverpool on the ferries, certainly from southwest Scotland, of people who don't want to fly, not necessarily because they don't like it and they don't like the airport experience, just because ferries seem to be a more gentle way to do it. Also, to Northern Ireland's advantage is this sort of scene that I enjoyed coming back from Italy when I was in Stansted Airport. There we are. If you're from GB, then there are huge problems coming through the UK border. That obviously doesn't happen when you are travelling to and from Northern Ireland. It's as though GB has a big sign outside saying, don't go to our rivals for high prices and bad service, come here instead. But It's all about experiences, and this is where Belfast is going to absolutely thrive, because both in the city and the rest of the nation, there is so much to see. And I'm going to take you briefly to Berlin, because I think this is really important. The concept that people have of Belfast, if they are of a certain age, is of the Troubles, I'm sorry to say. But every year that is dissipating. And in Berlin, the 1989 fall of the Berlin Wall is now absolutely the #1 tourist attraction. Everything you do there is to do with the collapse of the Berlin Wall and the political changes that took place. And it is that is a unique proposition for Berlin, as is the Peace Wall, the street art, I would call it, that we have in Belfast. Extraordinary art. And the crucial thing is, can anybody tell me what's special about the 10th of April 2023, please? Okay, it's the 25th anniversary of the Good Friday Agreement, the Belfast Agreement, being signed. Now, that's really significant, because I know there have been lots and lots of anniversaries, and for all sorts of political reasons and understandable sensitivities, they are not necessarily celebrated. But I think the 25th anniversary of the Belfast Agreement is something that can most definitely be celebrated. And 25 years, I know that you were all still at infant school then, but anybody who were born since then, since 1998, to them, the Troubles was obviously a desperately sad time, but also something that is now firmly part of history. And therefore, they are really interested to find the stories that go with it. And of course, Belfast, the film, who's seen it? Right, okay, extraordinary. This is going to be, despite the subject matter, a huge benefit for Belfast. I mean, what could you want more than a film, a big budget film that has the name of your city as the title? It's fantastic. And there's so much else happening. There is far more happening in, I think, in Northern Ireland than there is in any of the other three UK nations. Yes, you see this as soon as you arrive at the airport. Well, it's absolutely the case. And has anybody been to the Game of Thrones experience yet? Because it's just a superb location. I know that things haven't started quite as buoyantly as they might have done, but it is going to mean that, well, it's something you're not going to get anywhere else, like a Titanic experience. It's fantastic. And Belfast has a huge role to play as the city where you come and stay and eat and see the sights, but you're also using it as a base for going beyond. And the Gobbins, my goodness, what a fantastic location that is. And of course, it is now being extended as well. You have great cities. Anybody want to guess where this is? It's Armagh. And I was, I've spent, I think, 5 holidays in Northern Ireland since the start of the COVID pandemic, because frankly, if you're from GB, it's the only overseas trip you can have where you know that you're going to have a wonderful experience and you're not going to have to fill in any forms. Just take that lateral flow test. So Armagh being guided, and that's so critical. Northern Ireland, Belfast has superb guides, and my view and what I tell everybody is, please get a guide, because they will bring you the stories that bring Northern Ireland and Belfast to life. I've been out in the Ards Peninsula. Oh my goodness, I've discovered so much more of Northern Ireland, and it's a nation that I thought I knew pretty well. Anyway, and you're going to get to questions as well, and we'll be getting to those very shortly. Also, I'm going to stop by 12 minutes past 1. Now, what makes life exciting is that my watch stopped, so I've got exactly no idea what time it is, but I know that I will be heckled, and I know that you're now possibly thinking more about lunch than launch, so we will do that. Okay, so sustainability really important, and it's very good that Belfast is scoring well. However, there are things that can be done. And last time I was at George Best Belfast City, this was showing me that British Airways is absolutely a champion of sustainable aircraft. I'm not absolutely sure that that's the case. And the airlines are doing an awful lot in terms of lip service. However, there is good things coming down the road in terms of electric aviation. The very first vertiport opened in Coventry yesterday. No, I don't know why either, but it's a kind of test bed for electric aviation. And the great thing is that because Belfast is so close to such key markets in Scotland, Northwest England and so on, that electric aviation will work here sooner than anywhere else. Oh, accommodation providers. I think carbon date, I think 1994 was the first time I ever saw something saying, please let us know if you need us to wash the towels because we're trying to save the planet. Well, you can do that. They do this here in the Berlin Mitte Hotel at Checkpoint Charlie. So that's how important it is. It's in the title of a 4-star hotel there. They just say, do you want your room service today? And you say, no, I can probably do without that. And they say, fine, have a drink. And they give you a little token for a drink in the bar. So you stay in the bar and you think, oh, this is a nice bar, and you have another drink. So they make their money back. But it's just a very good incentive. It's very, very gentle. Another thing. Now, not being a proper celebrity, I don't really get to open things, but I did get to open a youth hostel in London. And I went along and they said, oh, do you want something to drink? And I said, yeah, I'll have an orange juice, please. And they said, you can't. And I said, okay, well, why not? And they said, well, because we don't grow oranges in London, you might have noticed, and therefore we can give you an apple juice from Kent. And just think, I had some very nice orange juice this morning, but if I'd been given some Armagh apple juice, I think I would have been even happier. Oh no! Look, sorry. That's what happens when you go from Keynote to PowerPoint. But you get the impression of what is going on. Just before we get to questions, just a couple of ideas about generosity and how important that is. So very simple touches. This was a cafe actually in Australia where I was lucky enough to go in February, and they just very simply say, "We're in a beautiful parkland. Please borrow a picnic rug." For the last 100 years, whenever I've gone into a restaurant and they've had a table reserved, it's had a big sign saying reserved on it. Well, why don't you just say promised? It sounds so much nicer. And that's what they do in this restaurant in Lithuania. So lovely thing there. And of course, Northern Ireland is giving a huge welcome to Ukrainian refugees. And that welcome will be remembered for a long time. People do recognise when communities are doing the right thing. And I applaud what Northern Ireland is doing. It is all about perseverance, but you are doing individually and more particularly collectively astonishing things. The image, the experience of Belfast compared with what it was just 10 years ago is vastly better, vastly different, vastly richer. I know whenever I come to Belfast, being a repeat visitor here regularly, I know that I am absolutely guaranteed a warm welcome and some wonders that I didn't know existed. So the rest of the decade, I think, is going to be the best decade ever for tourism in Belfast, quite rightly. I know there are going to be some terrible bumps along the road, and I know it'll be dispiriting, but honestly, as tourists, we love you. We think you're great, and we will properly, in time, reward you for your great work. So thank you very much indeed. You can follow me on Twitter and read the rude things. There we are. That was the Crown Liquor Saloon, that I say about various decisions by various people. But you'll also, I hope, read some good stuff about Belfast and the rest of Northern Ireland. So does anybody want to tell me what the time is? I'm going to say it's 12:58.
2 minutes to 1.
Is it 2 minutes to 1?
Yeah.
Oh. Right, well, that was lucky then. So we've got 14 minutes for questions. What are the chances of that? If you can throw a bread roll at me when it's 12 minutes past, I will stop. So thank you.
I think we have a couple of roving mics in the run around the route. We do. Thanks, Jack. Thanks, Fiona. And so, would anyone like to? Claire, Game of Thrones. No, first up, no doubt.
Of course, why not? Thanks very much, Derek. Hi, Simon. Nice to see you again. Claire Moles from Game of Thrones Studio Tour, which hopefully you all do know by now, is Northern Ireland's newest large-scale attraction, which launched in February of this year. We are now, thankfully, a Visit Belfast member, and while not strategically, geographically located in the city, we are a very viable day trip option for visitors into the city. So, Simon, I'd like to just know a little bit about your opinion on the role that Game of Thrones Studio Tour can play in the recovery of this city for the inbound tourist market.
Fantastic, 100%. There we are. That's. Oh no. Let me give you a bit more on that. Yeah. So it is, I would say, probably on the same sort of scale as the opening of Titanic Belfast, an attraction that you are simply not going to find anywhere else. Clearly, the Linen Mills studio really significant for devotees of Game of Thrones. Very, very professionally done from the visitor enjoyment point of view, and it's just a matter of getting people to Banbridge, which previously I've not seen it rated at the top of TripAdvisor for a great destination to go to. Transportation is a bit of an issue. The great thing is about the Game of Thrones Studio Tour is that for coach groups it is brilliant because you just go straight there. I guess its natural place is for international visitors as a place where you're going to be going as part of a journey from Belfast to Dublin or Dublin to Belfast, and crikey, who knows what's going to happen in terms of the permissions that you will need for that. But as something which says Northern Ireland now has another really compelling reason to come to the nation, it couldn't be better, and I really enjoyed my time there, and it's a superb destination which you all need to get to very quickly, and we'll bring lots of people here, which is just as well, given the possible border issues. Game of Thrones will continue to deliver for Northern Ireland for many years to come.
Thank you. Anybody else any questions?
Oh,
sorry.
Thank you very much. Afternoon, everyone. I'm Michelle Greaves from Victoria Square, which is a shopping centre in the city centre. Also offers the best views of the city from our viewing platform. You're very welcome, and lovely to see you back. The outlook is bright, and we've heard that many, many times today. There are lots of green shoots, and confidence is definitely growing, which is great. We've been on an enormous journey over the last couple of years. But I think we are a small population, and we very much rely on people visiting the city, and that's more so than ever. That's become evident on the journey throughout the island of Ireland and how much that's been really important. And I guess since reopening back in April 2021, it's been a lot more encouraging than we had thought pre that date. But we did very well from people visiting the city. Both staycations and also people visiting from the rest of Ireland, and that helped hugely. However, we are nervous and a little bit apprehensive. I know thank you for all your goodwill and how strong you think we will perform, but we are nervous because we have a couple of things that are uncertain. The war in Ukraine, and that is affecting a lot of people's view on what the future looks like. You've already mentioned people visiting from the US, but also the cost of living crisis, which is impacting our local population, but also everyone else throughout the UK and Ireland. I guess the question is, how much of a real impact do you think that will have on people's choice to visit and to spend what they have done previously? What do you think the real impact will be? Thank you.
Really good question. Okay, thank you. Let's deal with the terrible situation in Ukraine first of all, which I fear, given what the attitude of the Kremlin has been, could drag on for months, could drag on into next year, which is just awful from a humanitarian point of view. But you asked me to look at it from a tourism point of view, and I will kind of go back to the Yugoslav civil war in the early 1990s. That was a terrible conflict that had enormous human cost. But actually, it's a terrible thing to say, but people just kind of got used to it, and it was going on. It was distant relative to the UK, and people carried on with their lives even though this was happening. In terms of the cost of living crisis, well, it simply sharpens people's attitude, doesn't it? They want to know if they are investing their very hard-earned and in short supply cash, that they're going to be having a great experience. And honestly, I can truthfully say you're going to be doing that in Belfast. And a couple of things to look forward to, which I didn't mention. I mean, the whole UNESCO City of Music is great. The Year of Culture 2024 is going to be fantastic. 2024 is also when, and I'm trying to think, maybe Jerry, but nobody else in this room might be with me celebrating in 2024 the 60th anniversary of the greatest double A-side, and everyone's looking blank. They don't even know what a double A-side is. The best 7-inch single with fantastic tracks on each side ever, which of course is Van Morrison, Baby Please Don't Go, and Gloria, as fresh and brilliant as they were. And then of course Belfast Stories 2028, what a great thing to be working towards. By the way, I was very impressed to see that you've already got a booking, if I remember this correctly, a conference booking, 2029, and there's 1,300 delegates, 5,200 room nights, which is pretty impressive work. So, lots to look forward to.
I was wondering where you were going there with 60-year-old. What age do you think I am? Of course I know who Van Morrison is, but I wasn't there around whenever he was launching that song. Thanks very much. Anybody?
You remember what a double A-side is, though?
Anybody, any other questions? I can't see in this. Simon, I have... Oh, sorry, Michael. Go ahead.
Simon, hi, thank you. Michael Stewart, President of the Belfast Chamber of Trade and Commerce. I'm involved in hospitality. All cities are struggling with the recovery. In Belfast, we want to provide a clean, safe and vibrant environment for returning visitors. And hospitality is well known throughout the world for the welcome that we give everyone. But unfortunately, hospitality is slowly recovering, and a lot of the venues are operating on half tank. Some don't open Mondays and Tuesdays, probably the same in London. And a lot of that is to do with staff and the skills shortage. So probably a difficult question, but have you any thoughts that you can give us as to how we address that so we can help the returning visitors have a great experience?
That's a really, really good question, and what a terrible position to be in, where businesses that know that there's demand out there and it simply cannot be met. And clearly the only solution is to recruit and train good people, but that in a context of getting towards full employment is always going to be a struggle. And ultimately, it really comes down to the consumer, me, valuing the tourism product enough to be prepared to pay an extra 10-15% in order to reward the staff who are going to be delivering superb value. But there is no easy solution to it at all. And clearly, it is a really important thing for government to understand that this is holding back what should be the expansion of a fantastic sector. So I'm sorry I can't answer, but I can sympathise.
Any other questions? Oh, yes, I see waving frantically at the back. Joanne?
Thank you, and thanks very much, Simon. Joanne Stewart from the Northern Ireland Tourism Alliance. I just want to talk a little bit about future trends for tourism. One of the things that we've seen, which you talked about from COVID-19, is this move to a more hybrid approach and blended approach to doing things. So I just wondered, what sort of trends are you seeing with regards to maybe the digital transformation and how tourists may look to consume the tourism product and the sort of changes that might be coming down the line?
I'm not, I might be a bit of a Luddite here, but I'm not sure that beyond being able to summon a car, beyond working out exactly where you are and it's going to take you 12 minutes to walk to Titanic Belfast, I'm not sure that tourists are that digitally dependent. Now, clearly, in terms of identifying a great location, it's really important to have a good, strong web presence. And I know that both the city and individual organisations are doing that. But I think there's quite a lot of room, actually, dare I say it, for analogue. And if I can go back to the Harrison, where I stayed last night, they produce their own maps explaining the names of the rooms. So Hans Sloane, where did he live? Where did he go? C.S. Lewis, all these great Northern Ireland figures telling stories about that. And that's much easier to do, actually, if you've got a really interesting, engaging physical map than perhaps digitally, but there's clearly room for both, and history suggests that the side to be on, if you're going to have to choose between them, is digital. But I would say keep analogue as well.
Thank you. Chris?
Yeah, hi Simon. I've got a question for you, but actually just on maps. I love maps, physical maps, and so that's music to my ears because I completely agree. I suppose my question, I'm from a regeneration charity in East Belfast. We specialise in tourism and development of neighbourhood tourism. And Jerry talked a lot about the Green Tourism UK, and a lot of us in the room have signed up to the accreditation scheme through Green Tourism, and I think many thanks to Belfast City Council and Visit Belfast for supporting us in that. I think we collectively understand the importance of green credentials for group tour operators and conference visits and things. How important is our green performance in terms of independent travellers? And as a quick follow-up, do you think we're doing well enough to address the issue that we're an island and we have a comparatively higher carbon footprint just to get here?
Very good question. So how important, first of all, is sustainability to independent travellers? Much more than it has been. Now, I can take you back to the mid-1990s when the very first survey came out saying, would you pay 15% more for an environmentally, culturally sensitive tour operator? And everybody said, oh, yes, I definitely would. And then, of course, they didn't. And they haven't, and they haven't, and they haven't, but they are now. And well, we talked about websites. Having a good sustainability section, just a statement explaining what you are doing, people are really looking for that. In terms of the fact that people have to cross a body of water from anywhere apart from the Republic to get to Northern Ireland, I think we kind of price that in. And the fact that there are great ferry links from both England and from Scotland to Northern Ireland, I think is okay. And of course, all the airlines are going to say we've got more environmentally sensitive aircraft than anybody else. But eventually, electric aircraft will be arriving. But don't book your ticket quite yet for the rest of the decade. Oh, we must be getting very close, if not beyond 1:12, aren't we?
Hi, Simon. It was great to see you here in Belfast. I really enjoyed and found your what you had to say really interesting. Understandably, costs have had to increase because of the cost of goods and services and all of that. Just very brief question, from your perspective, do you think Belfast is an expensive destination? Because there's some feedback coming back that there is a perception that it is expensive, and that's not including flights, but hotels, restaurants and so on. So what are your thoughts?
Well, I come from London, and I find it incredibly good value from all respects. And that's actually a perfectly valid point that given that the biggest tourist market in GB is London, to be providing wonderful experiences for less than you would be spending in the UK capital is great. I don't think there's a problem there. I think people are actually, post-pandemic, more prepared to spend. Certainly all the suggestions from the tour operators, and this is outbound tourism, but it's that people are trading up. They are staying longer. They are going for increased quality, which is absolutely the right trajectory. So I'm quite happy about that. And just another tiny cost of living thing is that from next April, of course, the government, with its unusual sustainability credentials, is cutting the cost of domestic flying. So, and this is particularly going to benefit, finally at last, Northern Ireland, so that instead of costing £26 for a return flight from GB to Northern Ireland in tax, it will only be £13. So, which is, I think, genuinely, that's a sort of measurable bonus.
Anybody else? No? And just one, Simon, we talked about connectivity. You've talked a lot about it. Indeed, the last point you make there about MPD. We're always very anxious because we're an island off a continent. And you alluded to the fact that Flybe are back, but we don't know. What's your gut say? Do you think we can create enough demand from GB to sustain this level? I think it's about 80%. 80% of our capacity now back. Do you think we could sustain that now through demand generation from GB in the Belfast?
Look, I think capacity will go back. Will go above 100% of what it was. There is most clearly a demand for it, and the great thing is that you have to go back, I think, to the late 1980s to find effectively fares wars between England and Northern Ireland. You go back to the 1990s to find one. Anybody remember EasyJet and Go having a massive punch-up for months, and you couldn't pay more than £5, could you? Somebody's nodding, to get between Glasgow or Edinburgh and Belfast. So, no, everything tells us that the more you increase capacity and cut prices, the more that numbers go up. So I'm very, very enthused about that. One of the many reasons why the future is looking so bright.
Last one from me, if there's none else from and you referred to USP, and that clearly Titanic and the Maritime is our story. We have ownership of it, and you referred to Berlin and their unique selling proposition about the coming down of the Berlin Wall. What other USPs do you think that we might have here in Belfast would differentiate us from the rest of our competitors in these islands?
Well, I think that you have to look at how the visitor is going to be approaching Northern Ireland, and very, very sadly, lots of people in GB still don't properly understand Northern Ireland. They understand the Giant's Causeway, first mention of that, I think, and they will understand the Game of Thrones studio tour, and the Gobbins, and all these other great experiences which you can only have here. Now, Titanic is a wonderful brand for the city, and this is a startling building that it's like the Guggenheim in Bilbao. It absolutely puts its mark on. It is the most memorable icon, and unlike the Guggenheim in Bilbao, anybody been inside? It's frankly rubbish. It looks, but here, of course, you've got an astonishing story of social history and drama and humanity, and so that the Titanic will do for me. And of course, the way that the Titanic Quarter is changing is also just fantastic, and so I would be happy with that. I mean, the Ulster Museum is great, and of course there's all sorts of stories of the Armada and so on. And the other one has to be the Peace Wall. It has to be the troubles, I'm afraid. But there are great tours by very, very knowledgeable, expert and thoughtful guides, and so I think that is a real strength as well.
Simon, thank you very much. I think you've earned your lunch. There's no doubt about that. So we'll let you go. Thank you.